Mississippi: Glenn Rogers, the Casanova Killer, used the method of stabbing. He killed 5 people and targeted women with red hair. Between the years of 1993 and 95, he was sentenced to death row. Missouri: Maury Travis used the method of strangulation. He killed 17 people and was caught by leaving a digital footprint. Between the years of 2001 and 2002, he committed suicide in jail. Montana: Wayne Nance, known as the Missouri Mauler. His method was shooting and stabbing. He killed 6 victims with his own pistol while they were bound and gagged. He also stabbed many of his victims between the years of 1974 and 1986. His sentence was life in prison. He was killed by an intended victim during a home invasion. Nebraska: Della Sorensen used the method of poisoning. She killed 8 victims between the years of 1918 and 1924. She was sentenced to life in a mental institution where she later died. Nevada: Carroll Cole used the method of strangulation. He targeted 15 women who he deemed adulterous, like his mother. Between the years of 1948 and 1980, he was sentenced to lethal injection. New Hampshire: the Connecticut River Valley Killer. He used the method of stabbing. He killed 7+ victims by stabbing them multiple times. His victims were women. He possibly died to an Idaho inmate, but this is unknown. This happened in the mid-1980s. New Jersey: James Cullen used the method of strangulation. He targeted 29 people. He was known as the killer nurse that worked in more than 10 hospitals, poisoning them out of mercy. Between the years of 1984 and 2003, he was sentenced to life in prison. New Mexico: David Ray, known as the Toy Box Killer, used the method of torture. He had around 3 victims that he took in a soundproof truck called the Toy Box, where he tortured his victims for multiple days. Between the years of 1950 to 1999, he was sentenced to life in prison and later died in prison. New York: Richard Kalinsky, known as the Iceman, used a method of poisoning, stabbing, and strangulation. He killed between 6 and 100 people. He froze his victims to mask the time of death. He had many connections to the mafia killing contracts between the years of 1949 and 1986. He was sentenced to death row but died in prison. North Carolina: Henry Williams, known as the Taco Bell Strangler. His method of killing was stabbing and strangulation. He had around 11 victims and attempted to pawn victims' possessions before being caught. During the years of 1990 to 1994, he was sentenced to death row. North Dakota: Eugene Butler, known as the Eccentric, used the method of stabbing. He killed 6 unknown male victims, leaving only their skeletons found buried under his home during the years of 1900 to 1906. He was sentenced to die in an asylum. Ohio: Anthony Sowell, known as the Cleveland Strangler, used the method of strangulation. He killed 11 people, keeping their bodies in his house, burying them in the basement or in crawl spaces between the walls. During the years of 2007 and 2009, he was sentenced to death row. Oklahoma. Nanny Doss, known as the Giggling Grandma, used the method of poisoning. She killed 11 victims and had a sweet, happy facade, killing several husbands and children between the years of 1920 and 1954. She was sentenced to life in prison but later died in prison. Oregon. Dayton Rogers, known as the Malachi Forest Murderer, used a method of stabbing. He killed 8 people and most bodies were found in a dump site on private-owned land in the forest. Between the years of 1983 and 1987, he was sentenced to death row.